Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. What's going on, guys? Now, I know if you guys follow the channel throughout the course of me making videos in here, I promised you guys that I would do some sort of pound for pound list, and I know 2016 is not over, but I wanted to give you my pound for pound list and kind of just go dissect it, go through it, and just some good old boxing talk. So the way my pound for pound list will work is obviously it'll be top 10 fighters, but I also have another section for what can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 fighters that I have that aren't on my pound for pound list, but I put them on the cusp. So there's pound for pound, and then they're right on the cusp fighters. So there's 7 guys that I put there. So we're gonna go through those guys as well. I would say my pound for pound list consists of a couple things. Number one, it would be level of dominance. What are you doing when you get in the ring? How are you defeating your opponents? Are you knocking them out? Are you taking guys who are lesser than you 12 rounds? Or are you taking guys who may not belong in the ring with you and beating them very soundly in a couple of rounds? Via knockout. These are things that I hold in very high regard. Activity, I hold in very high regard. So if a guy has not been active fighting for whatever reason, for an extended period of time, that will be held against them. I also factor in versatility of the fighter. So if a guy only fights one style, that's taken into account as well. So yeah, man, just wanted to get into the pound for pound list. So we'll start with the on the cusp fighters. We'll work our way down all the way up. So the first fighter on the cusp of Brendan Taylor's True School Sports pound for pound list, 3/4 through the year, basically is Francisco Vargas. Francisco Vargas, at 130, even though he fought to a draw with Orlando Salido, amongst many of the hardcore boxing fans, Francisco Vargas is the consensus best fighter at 130. He burst onto the scene last year on the Cotto Canelo undercard, and arguably was one of the best fights over the last 5 years or so. In his bout with Takashi Miura, there was knockdowns. It was very bloody. He had to get up off the canvas and he had to stop Takashi Miura, and he ultimately made his way that way and staked his claim for 130-pound supremacy that way. After doing that, he had a fight earlier this year. It was actually, if you guys remember correctly, it was the first major fight on any network following Muhammad Ali's death. Muhammad Ali died on June 4th of this year. That was the same day as Ransom Bartholomew and Mickey Bay. So I remember the following week, which was June 11th, Francisco Vargas fought Orlando Salido at the StubHub Center in what is so far, in my opinion, the fight of the year. It was great toe-to-toe action, back-and-forth action. Just two guys that really left it all out there in the ring. It was a draw. It was one of those fights where, you kind of didn't want to see a draw, but it almost felt like you didn't want to see either one of those guys lose because of the amount of heart they fought with and effort they gave in the ring. So I think Francisco Vargas, he's not quite on a pound for pound list. I think he's got to win. To get on my pound for pound list, he's got to beat Orlando Salido in a rematch clearly and convincingly. I think once he does that, he's beaten Miura, he's beaten Salido. That'll set up more big fights for him. So once he does that, I think he's on my pound for pound list for sure. Working our way up, the next guy I have, I know a lot of you guys, as I'm saying this, might not agree with this, but hear me out when I talk about this fighter. The next guy on the cusp on my pound for pound list is Errol Spence Jr. Now, I know what you guys are going to say. Errol Spence, he hasn't fought the best fighters in his weight class yet, which is very true. But he's going to have a fight coming up very soon against Leonard Bundu, and I believe he will fare very well in that fight. That'll be a good measuring stick to see how he measures up to Keith Thurman, who I made a video about him and Errol Spence, saying that I believe Errol Spence, because of the way he fights, his style, and some of the things that Keith Thurman is prone to, I believe that that's a nightmare of a matchup for Keith Thurman, and Errol destroys him and beats him pretty soundly. With that being said, he's going to fight Bundu, good measuring stick for him. But he also, I was very fortunate to cover the credential selection right there. Earl, I was there at the Errol Spence Chris Algieri fight. You know, Chris Algieri is by no stretch of the imagination an A-class fighter. He is not the top guy in the division, but what he is a guy that is very tough. He's a guy that's been in there with name opposition, like Manny Pacquiao and Amir Khan, other very top level names at 147. Khan almost lost to Algieri. Pacquiao beat Algieri very soundly, but had a hard time stopping him. And Earl Spence went in there and he dissected him and he broke him down to the body and he wasted no time. He got Algieri out there in 5 rounds. I remember when I'm going into fight week that week in New York City, there was a lot of New York media, a lot of guys in there that were very partial towards Chris Algieri. And there are people out there that believe that he had a good chance to win this fight, and rightfully so, because nobody really knew. The jury was still out on Errol Spence Jr. I rated him very highly, so I thought the fight was not going to be competitive. I believe I had one of the closest predictions in the media because they had the media pick they write down the predictions before the fight started, and I had Errol stopping Algieri in the 6th round. I was 1 round short, but I think with time, Earl will begin to work his way up into that top 10 spot. I just think he's a nightmare for a lot of these guys at 147. First of all, he does a great job of breaking his opponents down, picking his shots well, and of course, as I've said many times, ripping to the body and delivering the most thunderous body punches in the welterweight division, which is why I think he will continue to get better. I think he's going to have a really good performance on August 21st against Leonard Bundu. And he'll begin to continue staking his claim and working his way up in the top 10 spot. But I think he's definitely on the cusp of becoming that type of fighter. And fights like the Algieri fight, fights like the Bundu fight, are going to push him closer to those bigger fights, which will eventually put him in this top 10. But right now, it's a little too early for us to put Earl in the top 10, but definitely on the cusp. After Earl, we have James DeGale. Now, before his fight with Rogelio Medina, in which he struggled majorly, and some people even said he got robbed, I actually had James DeGale slated right at number 10. Just after he had came to the United States, because he's one of he's a British fighter, but he's one of the few British fighters which for whatever reason doesn't get a whole lot of support. He doesn't get the same turnout like guys like Khan or Tyson Fury get, which I find weird because he's really, to me, he's exciting. Has a really good personality. So I don't know why that is. Maybe UK fans could educate me on why that is. But DeGale, he had to win the world title he has at 168. He had to beat a very, very good opponent. Andre Dirrell came here, was able to beat him by the skin of his teeth. Hopefully, that can be a rematch for him down the road. Then after that, he went to Canada. He fought Lucien Boutte, who we will admit is definitely past it, but as we saw in the Badou Jack fight, definitely has a lot of fight in him. Beat a very game Lucien Boutte that night. So he collected 2 really good names under his belt, and showed very versatile skills, switching styles on a dime. Not like Terence Crawford where you switch and you stay in that position for majority of the fight, but I'm talking like throwing 2 jabs, switch and come back left. Switching in between punches. Sometimes in tight corners and tight spaces. I think those are skills that warrant you being considered on a pound list, and James DeGale definitely showed those. He beat some good opponents along the way, so I think not in the top 10, but definitely on the cusp. Now, after James DeGale, we have, and I know I'm not a big fan of this guy. I know Ring Magazine has him in their top 10. He is not in my top 10 because of some things, the way his career is being managed and the guys he's not fighting. But the next guy I want to talk about is Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez, obviously one of the bigger names in boxing right now. He is a guy that was coming off of a knockout win of Amir Khan. Amir Khan obviously a great name, but not a middleweight. That was looked at as a massive cherry pick. So he's not getting a lot of credit from boxing fans for that one. I can't even give him full credit for that one. Khan was the one taking the risk. And he did what he had to do. I can't take it away from him, but he hasn't really been in the ring with top flight middleweights, and he's kind of been a very big diva, creating his own weight class at 155 at Canelo weight. So he gets punished for that. He gets punished for regardless. Yes, he did do Miguel Cotto, so that's why he's even on this part of my list. But even against Miguel Cotto was a little older. He was the naturally bigger guy. He was landing flush shots on Cotto, good counters. I would have loved to see Canelo get him out of there, show better, ring generalship and by cutting off the ring, which he failed to do. And he gets punished for that. And he's fighting Liam Smith, a guy from 154 who not many of us in America really know much about, who is not too heralded, who is not viewed as much of a challenge. So he gets punished for that as well. I think for Canelo, he can't crack my top 10 until he fights, named guys, whether that's Daniel Jacobs, Billy Joe Sanders, David Lemieux, Golovkin, Demetrius Andrade, Charlo, there make the fight. Julian Williams, even Willie Monroe would push him a little more closer to a 10th spot on my pound for pound list. But right now, his career has been way too carefully managed. So Canelo's on the cusp, but not in pound for pound list. After that, we have Timothy Bradley. Now Bradley, his only fight this year was against Manny Pacquiao. He wound up losing that fight. That fight was very big for him because it was his first big test with Teddy Atlas, and he was definitely a game opponent, but the style matchup, like the other two times, was just proved to be too much for him, and he couldn't do much Pacquiao. But Bradley's beat a lot of good fighters, from Lamont Peterson to Juan Manuel Marquez to just the list goes on and on. Undefeated David Alexander. The guy definitely has a good resume, and out of respect for Bradley and the consistency he's shown, the longevity he's shown in boxing, and the fact that he hasn't officially retired yet or anything like that, he's going to be on the cusp because he was a mainstay in the pound list for a long time. We can't just disrespect Bradley by taking him away from the on the cusp part of the my pound for pound list. So Bradley's still a factor within the pound for pound rankings. After Timothy Bradley, and this might be a little bit controversial, but Keith Thurman makes the on the cusp part of the pound for pound list. Let me tell you why. I know a lot of people, myself included, do believe that Keith Thurman is somewhat of a hype job. Do I think he's a skilled fighter? Definitely. But do I think that Keith Thurman seems to have, I'm not going to say lost his identity, but I think he doesn't fully understand who he is as a fighter. Because when I sit back and I watch him in the ring, I know he has good power, and I know there's no reason he shouldn't be afraid to deliver that straight right hand. But like I've said in the Earl Spence Keith Thurman video that I made, he's better when he's on that back foot and he's using that really cerebral, analytical mind of his to box people. That's when he's his most effective. That's when he can set up those knockout shots, and that's when I think Keith Thurman, if he can stay mentally disciplined enough to do that, he gives himself the best chance to beat anybody at 147 when he's doing that. With that being said, although I didn't think he won the fight, I respect the judge's decision. It wasn't a robbery. It was a very close fight. Could have won either way. He did get the win over Sean Porter. So with that being said, that's a top, 5 to 6 guy in the division. Definitely, not an easy out. So he gets credit for that. He gets put on the cusp of the pound for pound list, but he's still got to do more, and he's got to have some more dominant performances before I can ever bump him up to 10. So I just want to make that very clear. The last person on the cusp, and I've made so many videos about this guy, but obviously, regardless of what I say about him as a fighter, regardless of some of the shenanigans that are going on with him not showing up to the press conference, Andre Ward is still a very talented boxer. Andre Ward has beaten some very good name opponents, Carl Froch, Mikhail Kessler, just to name a few. And we don't know what the Kovalev fight's going to take place. I'll cross my fingers because I want to see that fight. That's a huge fight for boxing. These are the kind of fights we need in the sport. So with that being said, Ward is definitely on the cusp. I think if he does beat Kovalev, like I said in my videos, although you guys, all you could hear was me hitting on Ward and saying that all this stuff about Roman Gonzalez and how I think he's this much better than Andre Ward, and I still hold true to those words. I still think a win over Kovalev puts him in the top 3. The only way that I can bump him up from being on the cusp to all the way to number 1 is if, one, Roman Gonzalez falters majorly against Carlos Cuadras to where he gets some sort of gift decision, gets knocked out, has to hold on for dear life, and Billy gets the decision, something like that. and then Ward has a dominant performance over Kovalev. Then I might have to say, Ward has beaten a very good fighter. I might have to bump up to number 1 or 2 or in top 3 somewhere. That's just what it is. So Ward, definitely on the cusp. His resume definitely warrants in that spot, but it's a lot about what have you done for me lately. And Ward, all he's done for us lately is fight a bunch of tomato cans and trying to get back to his Super 6 form. So hopefully we get the best Andre Ward for that fight, and the fight's still on, because I really want to see it. And if he gets the W, I'll have no problem putting him in my top 3. So that wraps up the on the cusp section. I guess you could throw in a Tyson Fury, although I don't think he has pound-for-pound skills. I think he's just winning the fight because he's big. But Tyson Fury, I guess you could put in there as well. But to start my top 10, number 10 will be none other than Carl Frampton. Carl Frampton is a guy that, obviously if you guys have watched my videos on Carl Frampton, I'm not a particularly huge fan of him due to how he ducked Guillermo Rigondeaux, but he's definitely showed some class, some craft, and beat some good opponents here. If the year was to end today, he'd be Fighter of the Year. Beat his rival Scott Quigg, and was pretty much a stink fest in the eyes of many, but still a top fighter in this division. Moves up and beats undefeated Leo Santa Cruz and comes to America for the first comes to on American soil to do it, regardless of the big Irish contingent in New York. Still has to come travel, and that is hard for a fighter. So that being said, Frampton's beating 2 very, very good opponents around his weight, some top level guys, and he gets a lot of credit for that. So he has cracked the top 10 based on that and some of the skills he's shown in the ring, from just the skills he's been showing, versatility. Shout out to Frampton. Hopefully he fights Rigo. So yeah, there's that. Number 10. Number 9, Guillermo Rigondeaux is definitely on number 9 on my pound-for-pound list. I know a lot of you guys just now said, "Oh my God, how can you put him at number 9?" The reason he's here at number 9 is because although I'm a huge, well, I wouldn't say huge. I'm a Rigondeaux fan. I'm not a huge Rigondeaux fan, but I'm a fan. I appreciate him. Although he has, out of everybody on here, you could argue he has probably the best skill set on here from a pure boxing standpoint. But the fact of the matter is he has not beaten a name opponent in quite some time. I think you have to go back all the way back to Nonito Donaire to really find a name opponent that Rigo beat. His last 2 fights against Drian Francisco and Jazza Dickens, those don't warrant him being in the upper echelon of a pound-for-pound list. But based on his skill set, based on the way that he's dominated these guys, I'm going to have to put him at number 9, just out of respect to Rigo and his skill set and what he's done in boxing and just that alone. So Rigo is definitely number 9. For him, I would like to see the Santa Cruz fights, the Frampton fights, things of this nature. Scott Quigg even would be good, because I know Scott Quigg's not saying he would fight Rigondeaux. So if he can get some of those fights, which I know is going to be a huge issue, but if he can get some of those fights, I think that's what will propel him up the list for me. Number 8 is going to be a guy that a lot of you that don't follow small weight classes aren't too familiar with, but Naoya Inoue is definitely number 8 because here you have a young, Japanese fighter from one of the small weight classes. He's only 23 years old, and he's accomplished a whole lot of boxing. Being 23, he's won a title at light flyweight and junior bantamweight. Beat Omar Narvaez, who had made 12 title defenses, just stopped him too. So when you stop a guy like Omar Narvaez, a dominant champion, who yes, was 39 years old, yes, he was old, but still, the guy's made 8 to 12 title defenses, so he definitely knows how to win. He's done something right. There's that, and he's already been a world champion in 2 different weight classes, and in less than in 10 fights has established himself as the number 1 guy at 115. Many people believe, although he had problems in the Narvaez fight, and he definitely has some fine tuning to do, there's many people out there that believe that this guy is the one. And when I say the one, I mean like the one that can give Roman Gonzalez his toughest challenge, that could pose the biggest threat to Roman Gonzalez finally losing a fight. And the fact that he's looked at in that regard, the fact that he's conquered 2 weight classes, been a champion in 2 weight classes before the age of 24, and beating like legitimate opponents, not doing it the Adrian Broner way when you're beating like Gavin Reese, beating guys the legitimate way, legitimate guys to get those titles. That warrants respect. He gets props for that. That's why he's number 8. Number 7 on the list is Juan Francisco Estrada, another guy from a smaller weight class who gave Roman Gonzalez the toughest fight. After he lost a very close fight, Roman Gonzalez, he was gone on to become a dominant champion, a unified champion, defending his title 5 times since becoming unified champion, and actually establishing himself as the clear-cut number 2 best fighter at the flyweight division while Roman was there. So just that, I think his front foot game, just the way he's able to get leverage on his jabs, the way he's able to display his counterpunching ability. A lot of people compare him to Juan Manuel Marquez. I definitely think those comparisons are valid, and I think that Estrada can definitely crack the top 5 with a win over Gonzalez. That puts him arguably top 3. Who knows after that? If anybody beats Roman Gonzalez, I think has a legitimate case for number 1. But yeah, unified champion, defended it a ton of times against some decent opposition. I think that warrants him number 7 on the pound list. Now, number 6, this one for you guys. I know it's going to ruffle some feathers, but keep in mind that although this guy is in a semi-retirement phase, he's not really retired because he fought this year. And his resume, his resume is unprecedented in the sport of boxing. And the guy I'm talking about is Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao is my number 6 pound-for-pound fighter. Manny, he did have a fight this year. He beat a guy in Timothy Bradley who's a top welterweight. Is anybody going to argue that that Timothy Bradley isn't a top flight welterweight? If you do, you don't know anything about boxing. Manny, fought in March, I believe it was. So we can't necessarily say that, or February, March, I forgot. It was early in the year. He fought this year, so he's not retired. Floyd's been out of the ring for almost, it'll be a year next month. So, can't really put Floyd on this list because he's been really inactive. But Manny, he's only been inactive for about 5 or 6 months, and he's gonna probably fight in November. So he'll be fighting Jesse Vargas. Although I don't want to see that fight, and I'm gonna make a video about how Pacquiao, I believe, or not Pacquiao, but Pacquiao's team or whatever, they're ducking Terrence Crawford. They don't want that fight. That's my opinion. But still, his resume, 8 different weight classes, tons of Hall of Famers, beat a pound-for-pound level fighter in Timothy Bradley just this year once more, even though that was a fight we didn't want to see, and he beat him already. Still, that warrants credit, and he, just for that, out of respect to Pacquiao and him being active this year, he is number 6 on my pound-for-pound list. Now, number 5 will be Terrence Bud Crawford. He is the highest-ranked American fighter on my pound-for-pound list. He is the only American on my pound-for-pound list, and I think it's just due. I think he's earned his spot on my list because, we're talking about a guy who, when he was a lightweight, he fought Ricky Burns, went to Scotland. Ricky Burns was a solid champion who made a ton of title defense. I believe it had to be anywhere from 6 to 8. I don't remember the exact number, but I know Ricky Burns had a whole string of title defenses. Went over there, took his title, came back. He fought Gamboa. Yes, Gamboa wasn't active, but Gamboa, and I know Gamboa was undersized, but Gamboa is still that Cuban amateur pedigree. The fact that it was Crawford's first fight in Omaha, Nebraska, defending the world title, his first fight in Omaha since he lost the Golden Gloves in Nebraska. There's a lot of pressure. He went down those last couple rounds, but he lost his first couple rounds and then made an adjustment and delivered, the fight of the year. And then now, he's had some good wins. Destroyed Hank Lundy. I was there for that. Hank Lundy's not an easy guy to look good against. Made that look easy. And then now fought the boogeyman at 140, the guy that Danny Garcia paid step-aside money to, Victor Postal. Outboxed him. Victor Postal didn't win around. So Terrence has become a unified champion at 140. Definitely the king of 140 at this moment. He's definitely a top 5 fighter on my pound-for-pound list, no doubt about it. Number 4, my pound-for-pound list will be Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, This guy, I know you guys can say this maybe he's overrated. I don't think he's overrated. I'll tell you why he's not overrated, because to do what he's doing in boxing, I know we talked about it's kind of similar to what Noye is doing in the lower weight classes, but Lomachenko is arguably the greatest amateur of all time. That's number one. Number two, Lomachenko had, people don't talk about this enough when it comes to Lomachenko, but when you go from amateur boxing and fighting in that, system for so long like Lomachenko did, so many fights, there's still a transition that has to take place from amateur to pro. And some guys who are great amateurs don't wind up becoming pros because they can't make that transition. And he's seemed to make that transition more smoothly with every fight that passes by. He had a tough loss to Orlando Salido, who's obviously a top level fighter at that weight. And many argue that fight was that Lomachenko won that fight, and that Salido was hitting him below the belt, and it was a dirty fight, whatnot, whatever. But fact of the matter remains, he beat a top level guy in Gary Russell. Just went up another weight class and destroyed Roman Martinez, who people may not regard that highly, but still top guy in that division. Probably the worst of the top guys, but still a top guy in that division. And not just that, in the fights where he's fought guys like I think it was the Koasicha fight, he's displayed true pound-for-pound skills. Just the way he's able to shift and turn fighters and get in and get out and just show his opponent so many different looks. I think when you watch Lomachenko fight and you watch the technicality and the nuance of the sweet science on display, you can't help but put him on the pound-for-pound list. And when you begin to look at his resume and what he's done in less than 10 fights, to me, it's a no-brainer for him to be in the top 5. So Lomachenko, for me, especially with how devastating the knockout was in the Roman Martinez fight, definitely a number 4 pound-for-pound fighter. But I think if you want to put Crawford over him, it's fine too. I think what he's displaying in the ring, to me, I don't know. I have him pound-for-pound number 4. Number 3 will be Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev, he's the man at light heavyweight. Now, this Andre Ward fight, should it happen, represents definitely the biggest challenge of his career. Ward is a guy with tremendous amateur experience, gold medal pedigree. Yes, he's been inactive. Yes, he hasn't fought the best of opposition, but he's definitely a better fighter than John Pascal. He's definitely better than Isaac Chilemba. I can't necessarily say if he's better than Bernard Hopkins, because at the time Bernard Hopkins had fought Kovalev. He was the number 1 light heavyweight. He was very active, fighting multiple times a year. He had beaten John Pascal. He was a guy that was, at 48, still in shape, still, as cerebral and as analytical as ever. Very similar to Andre Ward, and we saw what happened to Hopkins. So Kovalev showed a dimension in that fight, which is even why we're putting him this high, because had he not shown that dimension that he could get on his back foot and box Hopkins and really win rounds, he would not be this high. So, and I just think that, and the way he's been dominating, the lesser opponents in his division when he does get those guys like the Najib Mohammedis of the world, that warrants, him being number 3, just a dominance. So Kovalev number 3, I think that's a good spot for him. Number 2 is Gennady Golovkin. When we speak about Golovkin, we're talking about a guy who's doing historical things. He's on pace to break Bernard Hopkins' middleweight title defense streak. People want to criticize his resume, but he's beaten some good guys. Martin Murray is a very underrated fighter. He had fought Sergio Martinez, who was lineal champion. That was a close fight, could have won either way. Some people think Martin Murray won. So you can look at it as Golovkin beating the uncrowned lineal champion. You could look at it that way. He beat David Lemieux in the unification fight. He beat Willie Monroe, who was a top 15 guy. He's been knocking everybody out. Well, I forgot the streak's like 21 or 22. Just an unprecedented streak right now, which is like stuff we haven't seen in boxing since the days of Mike Tyson. So I think when you talk about that level of dominance and you get the whole Mike Tyson of the middleweight division type of analogies, that's not hype. It's for a reason. So Golovkin, definitely number 2 on the pound-for-pound list, and he'll be fighting Kell Brook next. For me, I don't think that fight can do much for him pound-for-pound wise. Um, I think he does more for Brook. Brook somehow pulls that out. To me, the stylistic mismatch. So I'm not. It's not. If he does beat Kell Brook's style, it can't elevate him to number 1. I think for him, the guys he's got to get in the ring are the guys that don't want to fight him, which is just a tough break. But if he can't get those guys in the ring, if he can't get Billy Saunders in the ring, if he can't get Jacobs in the ring, he's done. He's proven himself as the king of 160. He's got to go to 168. He's got to fight the DeGales. He's got to fight the Vasyl Jacks or go to 175. Just whatever the case may be, he needs to go do something and not just sit there and say that this is not respected boxing. I like GGG, but at some point we got to make a decision and move up. And I know he's a lot older, so he's kind of filled out already. But I think he can make 168, and I love to see a fight with him and James DeGale. So hopefully that can happen. And should he be James DeGale in dominant fashion, we'll see how everything shakes out. Maybe we'll have to consider GGG for number 1. But it's no secret. You guys already know what number 1 was before I even started this. My number 1 fighter on Brendan Taylor's True School Sports pound-for-pound list is none other than Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. Now, obviously I'm a big Roman Gonzalez supporter. I'll be there on September 10th at his fight. What he's doing right now in boxing, I really wish people understand what he's doing right now. He beat Akira Yagashi, the lineal flyweight champion, in 2014. So he was the man in 2014 at flyweight. He beat at that weight, like I said in my other videos. He beat Brian Valoria, top 5 guy. Edgar Sosa, top 5 guy. Both of those guys have been dominant champions. Sosa has defended his WBC title 10 times at one point in his career. He had beaten Valoria, who upset Giovanni Segura, who at one point was number 9 pound-for-pound, had Andre Ward. Roman's display of the sweet science, the way he's able to keep his opponents under control, even if he is stunned, even if he is in trouble, even if maybe his punches don't have the same steam on them like they did in the McWilliams-Arroyo fight. Just the nuances he's been able to show and how he's been able to show supreme conditioning, throwing 1,000 punches a fight, outworking his opponent, not wasting movement, making every punch mean something, whether it's a punch that's to set something up or a punch to hurt someone or break someone down. Roman Gonzalez, when I watch him fight, I think the biggest misconception of Roman Gonzalez and what people don't see is that this guy does not waste any movement in the ring. He does not waste anything, no energy, no movement. And I think that's to be valued, Everything is about efficiency in life. Boxing is no different. And I think when you talk about the most efficient fighters, Roman Gonzalez is the most efficient fighter. He's beaten the best guys at every weight class he's been at, like I said, Akira Yagashi, Valoria, Edgar Sosa, McWilliams Arroyo, and now he's moving up to 115. He beat Yutaka Nida at a low weight class. Francisco Rojas, who was also a champion at one point. Now he's going up to 115, and he's going to go fight Carlos Cuadras. So like I said, is a naturally bigger guy who is, Carlos Cuadras has really good punching power, and he's able to, set up punches really well, and it's going to be a tough fight for him. If Roman is not careful and he gets clipped, this pound for pound list could look very different, So, I love Roman Gonzalez. I think what he's been able to do has warranted him the spot. I think the only way he doesn't hold the number 1 spot is if he doesn't have a good showing against Cuadras, and Kovalev and Ward, the winner of that fight, has a dominant performance. I really think that's what it comes down to. Roman, to me, is a cut above the rest because of not just his resume, but the sweet science, how he's able to keep his opponents under control. That's what champions do. He could have an off night. The Williams-Arroyo fight was viewed as an off night. It was the first time in like 10 fights he hadn't got a knockout, but still, he kept Arroyo, who, by the way, is top 5, top 6 guy, who basically is was the uncrowned flyweight champion. He got robbed against Ruan in the eyes of many people. And Roman, as you could see, the weight had kind of taken its toll on him. His punches didn't have the same snap to him. And Uh, that could have discouraged any fighter, but did it discourage Roman? No, he stayed very disciplined in his game plan, continued doing what he's doing, high volume of punches, not wasting movement, only throwing punches when they really mean something and there's a purpose to them. These are the things that make Roman Gonzalez the best pound for pound fighter in the world. The sweet science of boxing. Being able to put yourself in a position to get hit or to hit somebody and not get hit. And I don't think there's really anybody on this list, on the cusp or in the pound for pound list, that does this better than Roman Gonzalez. And I really hope, just my fandom aside, I really hope that people can just, whether you think he's pound for pound number one or not, I really hope people can really give this guy his props and his just due. That's really why I hype him up a lot, because I feel like he's not getting the proper coverage in the media, and Roman Gonzalez is displaying every fight what the sweet science truly means. So that's my pound for pound list. If you guys want me to run through it again, here's what it is on the cusp. The guys that are right there on the threshold, but need to do a little bit, or maybe even a lot more to get on the pound for pound list are as follows: Andre Ward, Keith Thurman, Timothy Bradley, Canelo Alvarez, James DeGale, Earl Spence, and Francisco Vargas. In my top 10, from 10 going down, it's followed as this. Number 10 is Carl Frampton. Number 9 is Guillermo Rigondeaux. 8, Naya Inoue. 7, Juan Francisco Estrada. 6, Manny Pacquiao. 5, Terrence Crawford. 4, Vasyl Lomachenko. Number 3, Sergey Kovalev. Number 2, Gennady Golovkin. And number 1, Roman Gonzalez. So you guys let me know what you think about the list. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Just let's get some good boxing talk going on. Leave your comments down below. Take the time to subscribe, and you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Dania. So until next time, take care, guys.